Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout as we look ahead to Fantasy Premier League Gameweek 21 and look back on the previous year to look at our New Year resolutions, what we're going to do differently, what happened, what mistakes there were, what successes, and what we'll do differently going into 2024. I've already done my video for this one. We've had a number of other people, and it's Tom's turn next. Fantasy Football Scout's Deputy Editor. My name is Joe, and this is Tom. Tom, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Joe. Happy New Year.
Yeah.
I think when you've been playing the game as long as we have, this is sometimes quite difficult to come up with new kind of ideas or things you're going to do differently. Because I'd like to think we've probably ironed out most of the bad things we do, but there are certainly still some takeaways. So I've got a couple which I'll talk about later.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, you and I have had a number of strong finishes over the years, but neither of us have ever won it. So
No.
there's always room for improvement, and there certainly has been in the years where I've done less well.
Yeah.
But
indeed,
so
yeah.
there's lots of interesting resolutions, especially that have come in for the community as well. So we'll look at those in a sec. Just a reminder to everyone to do subscribe so you can keep up to date with our videos and podcasts wherever you receive them. Also, do press that like button; it really helps us out. And have a look at fantasyfootballscout.co.uk for the latest offers for the membership area there, so you can get all the latest stats and analysis and those types of things, and all the tools and gadgets are there. Okay, well, let's have a look at some of the resolutions from the community. So there's just a couple here because I've been just gathering these from whenever we've done these sorts of videos already. Any comments that have been made about their ones. And Prince Farouk is on Twitter. That's what on this on YouTube. Comment here. He's got a couple here. Need to stop making early transfers. And maybe sometimes go with my gut for the captaincy. I tend to go for safer captaincy choices and hope my squad makes the gains. There's two ones there, really. The early transfers. This I think is going to be a popular one because you can get caught out, can't you, with a lack of information and players getting injured and perhaps better options arise. Players surprisingly come back from injury, that type of thing. But you're not a fan of early transfers, are you?
It's never affected me really because I'm not one to chase price rises that much. And so it's quite rare. I never feel comfortable making early transfers. They don't sit well with me. I like to kind of take in the midweek matches if there's European football or cup competitions. So yeah, I've never had that temptation, but I do know it is a problem for a lot of people. They want to make those transfers early, several days before the game week, and that can be good. You make more money often, but it can create problems as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I felt with money this season, I've sort of, organically just got more money just by having good players and have avoided having a lot of bad players that have lost money, which has helped. But at the same time, I can see that tendency. But I always think, unless I really desperately need to, I think once or twice I've made early moves because I was just 0.1 short. I would have been 0.1 short, and I definitely know they would have gone up in price. But then this week is a good example. I mean, I might make... I want to get Bowen in for Salah. I might make that move, but only after Bowen's played. I'm not going to do it before. And I think he's got a cup game this weekend. So just in case there's any more changes in prices. But, I mean, we're recording this on Tuesday, so this is prior to the Brighton-West Ham game. So this is going out after then. So I certainly wouldn't be making that move before that because you never know. Bowen could get injured. No. Salah out isn't the problem. It's who you get in. And the second one, you go for safer captaincy. He tends to go for safer captaincy choices. He should be a bit bolder. I don't think it's a question of bold. It's just doing research into it, really. I found that was my top resolution. It's just to get better at picking captains and to look more at matchups, I think. So, for example, a captain Salah this week, because Newcastle was so terrible on the road recently, and captain Salah against Brighton for similar reasons.
I think going with the safer captain choices, and by that I presume they mean the Haalands and the Salahs and sticking to those big players. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I think that will often going for I went for Alvarez this week, for example. I know a lot of people went for Watkins, and that okay, they got returns, but it didn't play out, and it was the safer captain pick
Yeah.
who got the biggest haul. No.
Yeah, definitely. And Otto Octavius, not the Otto Octavius, possibly, you never know. It never keep the most expensive forward in the game when Pep is being vague about their injury. Well, yeah. I know I've kept Haaland all this time. And if I could look back and do it again, if I had that with hindsight, I possibly would have sold, but I don't know. I quite like having Haaland, and it's only really Alexander Arnold I feel I've missed out on. So it's not the end of the world for me. I think if your team is in a bad shape, but I know where he's coming from now, and I'm going to be selling Salah and Son because they're not playing.
I think it depends who it locked you out of, maybe. I mean, I think you've got Solanke and Watkins, haven't you, Joe?
Yeah.
If he was going in with somebody like Alvarez and Watkins and he didn't have that, so you didn't get Solanke for one of those reasons, you've then gone out and got a hat trick, you might kick yourself a bit more. But I think because you had the right two forwards and Alvarez didn't really hurt you that much, I think in your position it's probably been fine. No.
Yes. Okay, so let's come to your New Year's resolution. What's your first resolution? Well, first of all, whereabouts are you in the rankings, and how do you feel about that? And just to give a bit of context to your first resolution.
Yeah. So I'm ranked around about 400k at the moment. We've still got Areola to play tonight. It's been a really bad game week. If anybody watched Goals Imminent, you'd kind of know that I had Palmer on the bench and I went with Alvarez over Salah. And so I've dropped about 100k places. But generally, the festive period had been good to me. I was in the millions going into that. So we've gone up quite a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's obviously not where I want to be. There's still a long way to go. And I think, I'm not going to get a 6 top 1k finish. I know that, but if I can get something around about 50k at the end of the season, I'll be really happy with that this year, given the challenges that there's been. So yeah, that's currently where I'm at. So.
Okay. I mean, this isn't a resolution, but one top tip is to be realistic about where you should finish. So don't think of it in terms of top 1k, top 5k, top 10k, top 100k even, is to look back on your own performances and get an average. And look at how many are playing. So get a sort of percentage average of where you should be. So if you're on average a top 5% manager, well then look at that and work out where that would be, where that would get you this season based on however many, is it 10 million, 11 million people playing. And that is a realistic one. So for example, for me, top 75k, I think, for me, would be on average a great season. That would be my realistic aim. So anything I get better than top 75k is great for me. So I don't look at that top 10k, top 20k. That is, for me, that's a good finish.
No, that used to be the benchmark when we started playing, didn't it, Joe? You were always looking for that top 10k, but now I think you have to kind of realign that now. And I think if you're finishing around top 50k, I think that you've had a very good season given the amount of players. And then it often comes down to 2 or 3 big decisions in a season, whether then you can then push onto that top 20k or something like that. And it's stuff which has happened to me in the past week. Don't bench Palmer, get your captaincy right in these big game weeks. And that's what it comes down to. And there's very fine margins there. It isn't always a skill issue. People will say the Palmer thing isn't fair enough this week, but with the captaincy, it can be very close calls. Sometimes you're on the right side of it, sometimes you're not. I mean, doesn't mean you're a bad manager.
No, the Salah captaincy this week is an example of that. I mean, I was on -2 points by half time or so. So that could have gone disastrously wrong. Just through some guy, whether he can score a penalty or not. And that's what you're relying on. It's nothing to do with yourself. It's to do with some geezer on a football pitch somewhere in the country.
But yes, so if everybody's trying to, if you're ranked around 50, 75k, I think you mentioned, Joe. I think they're decent finishes. I don't think that's anything to kind of be disappointed.
And that's worked out by an average percentage finish each season.
Yeah.
So I can't
Yeah.
remember what that is, 1%, 2%, whatever.
It's probably top 1%,
Yeah,
isn't it? Yeah,
and
top
it's
1%
around
probably.
that,
Yeah.
and so therefore
Mhm.
extrapolate that to this season. Therefore, that's what I should be getting, if
Yes.
it's a good season. But I'm not going to cry if it's not. Okay,
Yeah.
what is your first New Year resolution in FPL?
Well, I'll start off with because it links in with that,
Mm.
and that would be to look at captaincy
Hmm.
and make some improvements in that,
Hmm.
which links to one of the comments that we read out earlier. I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with it, but Greyhead runs a series of
Mm.
articles on Scouts called The Great and the Good, where he tracks 18 FPL managers and he tracks their performance now, looking at rank and tracks transfer activity. And he recently, after game week 19, he looked at the captains and how we've performed across the
Mm.
season. And my score prior to this game week was 246 captain points. And when I looked at that, it wasn't the worst in the league
Mm.
by any means, but it was probably fourth or fifth from the bottom, I think. And I looked at the guys at the top, and Fabio and Jan had got 294. So that's
Ah,
a 48-point swing,
yeah.
which feels like a lot because I think I'm only 30 points behind Fabio.
Mm.
So then obviously, no, I'm not saying captaincy is the
Yeah.
sole reason, but that's an area where it's probably the most important
Mm.
decision you make each week, the
Yeah.
captaincy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Before transfers. Um, I think when you played your wild card, maybe had a bit of a say in this. I think did you play yours game week 8,
Yeah.
Joe?
Yeah.
Am
Yeah.
I right in saying that?
Yeah.
I played mine 10, and I think for the people that played in 8, they
Mm.
maybe got Salah in for that Brighton fixture
Mm.
when he got the brace. A lot of people like me went with Son, who was at Luton, who blanked. So,
Mm.
but generally, I think that it's an area. I mean, when I looked at the captain breakdown, I've captained Haaland 10 times this year, Salah 6 times,
Mm.
and then I've given it to Son, Watkins, and Alvarez, I think once or
Mm.
twice. So it's not like I'm being massively differential
No.
with the
No.
picks.
But
And
it's just
I mean,
timing it. I mean that
yeah,
Son Salah one was a key one, I think.
big one, big
That was a
swing.
big one.
Yeah,
This week again, Salah v Son ended up being a
nine
big one,
points.
even though Son got a very healthy 9 point return.
Yeah, well, I was on Alvarez, so that was a 9 point swing with
Yeah,
Salah. So
yeah,
that's again adding to it, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
each week in terms of what I do is I look at things like I look
Mm.
at Hibbo's Captain Sensible on
Yeah.
site. I look at RMT. I look at FBL Review. I even look at
Mm.
Mikel's transfer algorithm and the captaincy calculator there. So I take in a lot of information. But I think for my own peace of mind, when I see something like that, I want to kind of check how I'm doing.
Mm.
Am I missing something? Is something in my research that I'm
Mm.
not looking at? Am I focusing on too much on weaker defenses rather than sticking with that player who's generally going to churn out a
Yeah.
bit like
Yeah.
Salah?
Mm-hmm.
Am, I've got to look at the weighting, or am I just being a bit unlucky? It could just be like
It's
that. I don't
probably
know.
a bit of everything, but
Yeah.
the luck element cannot be denied because I mean, as you said,
Yes.
you're relying on some bloke on a football pitch somewhere hitting the ball
Well,
on target.
yeah. The two examples which I pulled up there. So Alvarez this week, I mean, Salah got the two penalties. He missed one, didn't
Yeah.
he? So maybe a little bit unlucky. I mean, if Alvarez gets a penalty in that game, then it's different. The Son one, I mean, that going back to when Salah got the haul at Brighton,
Mm.
that was unlucky because Spurs had a player sent off in the first half,
Yeah,
if I remember
exactly.
rightly, and the
Yeah.
dynamic completely changed in that game. So there are fine margins, but it's just when I see a stat like that in front of me
Mm.
where I've lost 48 points on other
Yeah.
competitors. I immediately want to delve into that and go over what I'm doing and the process. So that's
Well,
something which I'm going to kind of be looking at in the next couple of
well,
weeks.
I've got some stats I'm put up on screen now, which is all backed up. So I've got two lots of stats here, but I'll go to the one on the right hand side first, which is the total actual captaincy points as a percentage of your highest possible captain points in your team, and
Right.
that's
Okay.
52%. So half the time, just over half the time, you are captaining your highest points
Yeah.
getter that week. But so, for example, I mean, there's fine margins, but one we did with Lee from FPL Family, his one's 58%. So it's
Okay.
and that's before his Salah captaincy haul this week. I actually did
So
that before,
that,
so that's going to be even
okay.
higher. And my
Hmm.
one's a little bit higher than your one, but so and as you were saying, you compare it to some of those other, great and the good league managers as well. So it does show that statistically, that you got probably room to be sort of 10% better at picking captaincy, or 10%. You need 10% more luck with the blokes you are picking that they actually hit the target.
Well, we'll go with the improvement one. Yeah, I do think I do. I mean, I am generally quite safe. It's not like I'm going and I'm captain,
Yeah.
Anthony Alanga or John McGinn or anything like that. I'm picking but it's just the timing, which is very important. And I've been playing the game for a long time. I'd like to think that I cover most bases, but that's just something which I'm going to kind of focus on in the new year and make an adjustment if I need to.
Okay. I mean, I tell you what, I don't know whether you were better last year or whether you and I were both better last year when we had the captaincy video much more frequently, and the years before Haaland. Because I found we very occasionally do them, and there was one week where I did the week where I captained Salah away to Brighton, and that was I had to do it on my own because I think you were off that week, and that made me change my mind, and it was just sort of delving into that and looking at Brighton's track record after post-European games, and that was a sort of a persuading factor to me. So I guess it's those sorts of things, isn't it? It's that one. So captaining Salah this week for me, the big deciding factor was just how bad Newcastle were away. I think I saw a stat somewhere. Sometimes you pick up these things, and it goes back to what you pick up elsewhere, and it was someone said that Newcastle, it may have been even from one of your articles, Newcastle were the 17th.
I still got it wrong.
They were 17 in terms of away stat. They were the
XGC or something.
They were, I guess, how you phrase it, the fourth worst performer. They were ranked 17, basically.
I mean, they've been very open recently, uncharacteristically, really.
And so I just thought, well, I need to not think, oh, that's Newcastle, Moneybags Newcastle. That's actually, that's a team that's not actually performing very well at all. They're one of the worst performers, and so it's those kinds of things, really. But anyway, I've got some more stats on the screen, but we'll come to that if and when we need to. But let's move on with your second resolution.
Yeah, so the second one isn't directly to how I play the game, but it's just generally trying to put aside a bit more time to take in some more content this year, and in FPL content, and specifically put time aside for that each week. And I think that can sometimes be difficult because I'm working at Scout all the time, that whenever I have a bit of free time in the evenings or the mornings, you tend to go and work on an article or you do something which directly helps you in your job. And I will listen to content throughout the week, but I tend to dip in and out of it. It's very rare that I'll sit down and listen to a whole episode. I'll be jumping in and out. And I sometimes think you need to get the full context of points. I don't think it's sometimes great jump into certain sections and then go in. I mean, FPL Wire is probably my go-to pod. I love all the guys there. I really like listening to Mark on Black Box and Az. I think the Above Average pod is going from strength to strength. They're the kind of the three, I suppose, that I'd mostly go to, the staples. But there are other pods as well that I want to explore, like the Inspected Goals one, the new one, which Luke does. Planet FPL produces some great content with the correspondence clashes where you get that real kind of fan insight. And as well, not just FPL related, but tactic podcasts on the Athletic and things like that. And so I think for me, a lot of when I didn't work at Scout, a lot of my early success was because I took in probably 3 or 4 pods each week on my commutes. And I'm quite good at I would like to think I am, at taking various parts and then forming my own opinion from that, but just getting that knowledge. And I think it's something which I have maybe neglected in the past year, with the busy life outside of FPL as well, with children and stuff like that. You know what it's like, Joe. So that's an area where I think I want to, for my own sake, put aside a bit more time each week for that. I think I maybe need to get a dog. I don't know. Maybe
I was going to say, have you got a dog? Because that's where I do most of my listening. So I've got a walk. I've got a dog asleep. Well, there she's asleep. No, she's not asleep. She's almost asleep next to me now. I've got another one downstairs, and I'll be taking for walks shortly. And I will put an FPL one on, and it'll probably be one of the ones you've mentioned, because all of those they always contain something, a nugget of information that I can use, and it might be that deciding factor, like I mentioned with the Salah captaincy decisions. and it's always that one. There's one or two, and also the ones I quite like listening to. As you said, they're, you know, it's like listening to those guys. Both of us like FPLY. We're fans because Zof and Prano and Praz are there's similarities with all their management styles we like, and if in Prano's case, Late Riser's case, he's very different to my style, probably yours as well. But I like that as well because you get the perspective from that other. So it's a nice perspective there.
Yeah, and it's like you say, Joe. It's maybe have I missed something,
Yeah.
and that's why so listening to content is good because I respect all of those guys and what they bring to it. And I know from having sat on that pod before that there's certain things which they think of which I don't, and I'm sure it's both ways. You know, they probably listen to this and there might be something that pops up,
hopefully.
or our goals imminent videos. So it's just about some content creators get a bit of a bad rep. Certainly in the community, and I know a lot of people's New Year's resolutions will be listen to less. I don't look at it like that because you listen to it, they're not deciding a transfer for me. You're getting that information and then you process that yourself and decide whether that's a good move or not. But getting information in FPL isn't a bad thing.
No,
you know, just don't let it get in your head though and make your decision for you is the difference.
One of the Meet the Manager videos I did a couple of years ago was a guy. He's doing library studies, and he was doing an academic doctorate, I think doctorate or master's in information gathering. And he was actually using, as an FPL manager, he was using the FPL community as an example of incredible information gathering. He felt that within making decisions in fantasy football, the community, and by that, those who create content, whether that be on tweets or articles or podcasts or videos, that community, the information that is out there is amazing. And it's a question of, as you said, there is only so many hours in the day. You have to cherry pick, and you and I think, have found the certain videos and podcasts and content creators that we can accommodate into that working week. And as you said, you want to get more into your working week. And it's really important to do that, I think, because that amount of information that's available is really good. I mean, this was the point he was making. You know, this is even more so than other industries. Other industries can learn, and in particularly sort of within libraries and the way people, you know, gather information and data, they can really learn from the fantasy football community. They're amazing. Yeah,
and they're just entertaining. You know, I think it'd be a lot worse the community if we didn't have these guys producing content each week. A lot of them juggling it alongside full-time jobs as well. It's not like most of them don't do it all the time. And I just find them entertaining, good listens. And so I definitely want to put aside a bit more time next year. I
will give a shout out to another one, a new one this season. It's one of Fantasy Football Scout's one, even though obviously this is Fantasy Football Scout, but I would have said it anyway. It's the Deadline Dilemmas one that Praz and Rich do, are usually on a Thursday night, Friday night sometimes, and that's before deadline. The pacing of it, I think, is really good.
It's a bit shorter, isn't it?
It's a bit shorter.
As well. It's not like it's not going to be an hour and a half or anything. You can dip in and out a bit quicker.
It's got really considered opinions about those key deadline decisions that you're going to have the next day. But at the same time, there's an urgency to it as well. So I quite like listening to it because there's no pondering. There's not like the way I speak in ums and ahs. This is just like bang, bang,
and
bang.
Myself.
Gets the information out quick and well presented, and I like that one. I think that Rich and Praz make a lot of sense as well. It sort of resets me in the week. I think, shall I captain this player? And then think, no, I'll wait. I'll just go. I'll go for the normal approach.
Yeah.
Okay, no, it's a good one. There. Did you have any more before I put more stats up?
I mean, like I say, we've been playing for a long time, and it's sometimes, those two stuck out. I'm not just going to create a third for the sake of it, so I think I'll leave it at that.
Okay, well, I've got a potential one for you. So these stats I put up here, and we spoke about it just before we came on air as well, and I've looked at the number of transfers you've made per position. So you made 2 goalkeeper transfers, fair enough, 6 defender transfers, 7 midfielder transfers, and 3 forward transfers. And given the amount of points midfielders get, and indeed many forwards, I would have, and the defenders and the amount of defenders that could get you a massive double-digit haul. I think
Yeah.
what another resolution possibly could be is less defender transfers. Just whatever you've got, stick with it, unless it's really poor, and focus those transfers on
Yeah,
the
I
big
think that's
the big lads who get the big points.
I think that's fair. I think I'm just gonna have a look at the transfers, the
Yeah,
defenders, and they've been for Tarkowski and Cher came in game week
yeah,
7, and then Trippier came in game week 9. I was a bit late to the party
okay,
with Trippier, but you can see recently where there's been a
yeah,
problem because I bought in Reece James and then
yeah,
had to transfer him straight back out a couple of weeks
yeah,
later. And then Livramento came in. That's been hit and miss.
yeah,
And then Alexander Arnold recently, which obviously
yeah.
has been
Obviously,
a good
he's
transfer,
yeah.
an
So
exception.
so
But
perhaps some
certainly,
of
I do think that there's
yeah,
something in what you're saying.
yeah.
Reece James being probably a needless transfer, trying to go in early when maybe that transfer would have been, that cost me 2 transfers. It would have been much better to
Yeah.
just focus on something a bit further forward.
Yeah, that's what I thought, and that's something. When I looked at that, I thought, well, hang on, I can do that as well. And I've looked at some. So, yes, I did get Alfie Doughty in, but not every one of my defensive transfers have been Alfie Doughty. That's like a rare shining beacon in amongst loads of like, a Newcastle centre back or whatever, whoever else I've got. I can't even remember now who I've got in. Oh yeah, Crystal Palace centre back, and perhaps and that made me think, well, maybe instead of that transfer, I could have used that transfer on getting a better midfielder.
The forward seems low for me there in
Yes,
3. Alvarez being one of those who came in. Watkins would have been,
I
no, Watkins came in on the
I think
wild card, I think.
yeah, mine will be higher for that one, but that historically, I like to make striker changes because strikers are
Yeah,
really form based. They're real confidence players. So
fixtures
and they do dovetail. So a cheap. So I've had Ferguson in, Pedro, Morris from Luton. I do like to get a good third striker from a team that has got a good fixture run, irrespective of that. They're a big player, but I do think. Historically, the Ivan Tonys, and I'd call it basically, it's the Darren Bent role in my team. When he played for Sunderland,
yeah,
and he just scored all
yeah.
the time. Everyone was slagging Sunderland off, and after a few games, it was like, oh, hang on a minute, Darren Bent's scoring every week, and he's only 7 million.
Yeah,
It's that
I think
kind
the
of
only transfers I've made up front, I just had a look, is I've bought in Alvarez twice and I've bought in Solanke once. So those are the only
okay.
moves that I've made.
Yeah,
And 2 of those transfers have been very recently.
yeah,
So with players like what, I guess because I've been playing 3-5-2 with Haaland and Watkins for so
yes, of
long
course,
that you
can make
don't,
less.
you have a, yeah, when you're playing that formation, you don't make as many transfers. But very interesting to see it. And
Yeah.
certainly something which I'll have another look at later.
Yeah, definitely. Excellent. Well, hopefully, I mean, there's certainly, as we've been chatting, it's certainly given me some more ideas for my resolutions. Do have a look back on my videos to explore my resolutions, one of which was don't underestimate the promoted sides. That was
I like that one. I'm a big fan of doing the research on the promoted side. So
definitely.
I definitely back that one.
Especially this season where they were much maligned at the beginning of the season, but I think there's a lot of interest in them now.
Yeah, even though they're probably one of the 3 worst teams in the league, FPL is very different, isn't it? You don't necessarily have to be winning every week to get value out of them.
No,
so,
Trafford, a good goalkeeper at Burnley, is going to get lots of save points. Doughty,
players like Archer and Doughty and Barkley. Yeah,
Archer,
some of them are emerging, aren't they?
Well, Archer's playing in a well-organised side, really cheap. So there's definitely options there. But there's lots of other. We've got lots of other videos coming up. And as I said, got Lee's one. So you're probably watching this after that one's come out. So they're all during the week. Do look back at them all, and hopefully, like you were saying about looking at content, there'll be one tiny nugget from what we've been saying. Even if you take that away and it helps that week, job's done. But thanks a lot for your time, Tom, and take care, and see you soon.
Great. Thanks for having me, Joe. See you soon.